All right, so welcome back to the Malware Analysis Project 101. In today's video, we're going to be creating our own isolated malware analysis lab. We'll be doing this both in a self-hosted way with VirtualBox and also in AWS. You can choose whichever environment suits you. I recommend the self-hosted way just because it's free, but whatever you do. Now, in today's video, we're going to be creating our own virtual isolated network, making sure that we compartmentalize malware when it's detonated, and we're dissecting malware. We want to make sure it is safe to detonate. In addition, we're going to be disabling Windows Defender and setting up Remnux, which is going to act as our C2 server and impersonate DNS service or anything else that we want to within our malware environment. So we have a lot to do here. Let's go ahead and get up and running with just a quick overview of what we're going to be doing in today's project. All right, so welcome back to the Malware Analysis Project 101. In today's video, we're going to be building an isolated malware analysis lab for compartmentalized analysis and detonation of malware. So let's go ahead and overview what we're going to be doing in today's video. Ultimately, we're going to be setting up our isolated malware analysis environment, but we're also going to be installing some malware analysis tools using FlareVM. And then secondly, we're going to be creating an immutable snapshot to restore our environment after we've detonated our malware. So, once we're done with our analysis, we can go back to a clean state. In today's video, we're going to be doing both a self-hosted and a cloud-hosted malware analysis lab environment setup. We'll be overviewing the topologies here in a moment, but basically you can choose whichever one you want to pursue. Ultimately, I do recommend the VirtualBox self-hosted model over AWS because it's free and there are some limitations to both, but the self-hosted works for most cases. Okay, so to start out with the self-hosted topology, like I said, we're going to be using VirtualBox as our hypervisor to create and manage our virtual machines and our network settings. Ultimately, we're going to have two virtual machines here. Virtual machine number one is going to be FlareVM. This is where we're actually going to detonate the malware and assess what's going on. This is just going to basically impersonate a random Windows 10 workstation, just a default Windows 10 with some malware analysis tools installed. And then virtual machine number two is going to be our C2 server. It's going to have Remnux. And ultimately, we're going to be creating an isolated network in the 10 block address space. And this is going to be completely isolated from the internet. So virtual machine 1 and 2 can talk to each other, but they can't talk to anything else outside the internet. Now, there are ways that we will be able to access the internet through the power of VirtualBox, but ultimately, we do need to make sure that we have no internet access when we are detonating malware. Next is the cloud-hosted lab model. Now, full credit goes to Aiden. He created this, and I'm basically using all of his instructions and putting this in video form. So go make sure to check out the project on GitHub. I'll leave a link in the description below. Now, ultimately, in today's video, we are only going to be creating one virtual machine, and this is going to be hosted out on AWS using the EC2 service, which is basically just virtual machines. Now, we're going to be using the 172.16 block address space, and because we are out in the cloud, this offers a unique advantage, and that is we'll have internet access fully provisioned. So we don't have to worry about malware getting internet access because this isn't our machine. This is just going to be hosted out in AWS. Now, to access this virtual machine, we're going to be using RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol, on a personal computer. So if you're following along with a Windows 10, Windows 11, there is the native RDP client already installed. And if you're in macOS, I recommend checking out the RDP clients. There's many of them out there. I'll provide a name in a moment. All right, so for some things to note, ultimately in today's video, it's going to be a lot of just issuing a command and then waiting, or clicking on some buttons and then waiting again. So ultimately, I've come down to the sub-bullet points here that I think that you're going to have to pause the video and just wait for something to install or download. There are a few things to note when it comes to the cloud-hosted option. Number one is that because we're using AWS, they require some sort of banking or a credit card associated with the AWS account. So this will cost money, but through the power of infrastructure as code via Terraform, you can issue a Terraform destroy after you've assessed your malware, and that will make sure that you're not, using some sort of EC2 instance that you're paying money for. It'll just completely destroy it. Number two is that if you're not using Windows, like I said, you're going to need to install an RDP client. And for Mac OS, which I assume is a lot of people are running, just go out on the App Store and look up Microsoft Remote Desktop. And then third point is that if you are in a Windows 10, Windows 11 environment, you need to make sure that you have a Linux or Unix terminal of some sorts. I recommend going out on Windows and using Windows Subsystem for Linux, Ubuntu 2004 or 2204. All you have to do is go to the Windows Store, look up Ubuntu, and then just click download. It's that easy. And then ultimately, you can download the slides and notes in the description below, as well as the commands will be in the description. All right, so let's go ahead and get moving with the self-hosted option first using VirtualBox. Okay, so starting out with the self-hosted malware analysis lab environment setup. By the end of this, we're going to have a FlareVM virtual machine as well as a Remnux virtual machine, and they're going to be able to talk to each other. Now, to power this, we of course need VirtualBox, which is going to be our hypervisor and power these virtual machines and the virtual network. All right, so up on this URL here, you're going to have VirtualBox and proceed to download whichever installation host OS that you have. So in this case, I am running Windows, so I can just click Windows. It's going to download the installer. Now, as you can see from the little one, I've already installed this installer, and I actually already have VirtualBox installed. So what's going to happen is it's going to come to this modify or repair screen, but if you don't have VirtualBox installed, just run through the defaults. It doesn't really matter. You don't need to change any of the default settings. So once you have VirtualBox installed, what you're going to be able to find is a VirtualBox little tool here. Now, in my case, I already have Remnux and FlareVM running, but we are going to be creating another instance of this for the self-hosted lab. Okay, so going back to our web browser here, the second URL link, and like I said, all of these links will be in the description below. We're first going to have to download and install just a base installation of Windows 10 Enterprise. This is going to act as our victim machine where we're going to detonate the malware. So Microsoft does require that you start a free trial and enter in all of this information. So I just will go ahead and do this real quick, but it doesn't matter. You can put in 1, 2, 3, 4 for your phone. It doesn't really matter. Once you have your information filled out, just click the download now. And this is going to redirect you to a web page where you can download Windows 10 Enterprise. Now, in this case, we're going to be using the English United States edition and the 64-bit edition specifically. So just go ahead and click this, and you will be directed to the ISO file. This is where it's going to download. Now, depending on your internet connection, this could take some time. So go ahead and pause the video, and I will wait for this to fully install. Okay, so as you can see, the ISO has installed, and while we're on the topic of installation, let's just go ahead and go through Remnux and install Remnux as well. So again, the URL will be in the description below. What you're going to want to do is make sure the VirtualBox OVA file tab is selected, and then you're just going to click whichever one you want to. I would go ahead and click the box version, so just go ahead and click box, and wait for this to download. Just click download and wait for that to download as well. Now, in this case, we don't need to wait or pause the video for this OVA file to download. Let's proceed to go ahead and set up our first virtual machine, which will be the Windows 10 FlareVM instance. So going back to VirtualBox, make sure that it is opened, and we are going to go to new right here, and then we can add a new name. You can proceed to have the virtual machine wherever you want it to be located. I'm just going to use the standard VirtualBox VMs. Now for the type and version, just make sure it's Microsoft Windows 10 64-bit. Then just go ahead and click Next. Here we can allocate our base memory. 2 gigabytes is good enough for me, but feel free to use whatever you want. Click Next. Now in this case, we're going to be creating a virtual hard disk. FlareVM requires that at least 60 gigabytes is available and free, but I'm going to proceed to just allocate 75 gigabytes just in case. So you do need to make sure you have space on your computer. If you don't have space on your computer, I recommend either locating a flash drive, well, a big flash drive, or a external hard drive, this could definitely be significant and help you with your virtual machine management. Click Next, and then just proceed to click Finish. All right, so now we have our FlareVM Windows 10 box here. Go ahead and click Start. We're going to see this VirtualBox VM dialog box pop up with DVD here. And this is because we actually haven't loaded in our ISO. So you're just going to click the down arrow and then proceed to choose Other. Now, my ISO file that we just downloaded, the Windows 10 Enterprise, is in my Downloads folder. Just clicking Open, and then just choose Mount and Retry Boot. All right, so if you see the Windows logo, you are successfully on the right path. You can just click out of this little box here. Next, we're going to go through and just choose the defaults here. So just proceed to click Next. Then do Install Now. I accept the license and terms. Again, just lots of the defaults. Now, when you get to this box here, make sure to choose Custom. And we're going to create one more partition. So all you have to do is just click New. The default is completely fine, whatever that is listed. So I'm just going to click Apply, click OK. And then make sure that your Drive 0, Partition 2, which has the most gigabytes or most storage available, is selected. Proceed to click Next. And then this will take a while to install. So once again, I'm just going to pause the video and wait for this to fully install and for the next screen. All right, so after the virtual machine restarts a couple of times, we're going to be presented with this screen here. Again, we're just going to be running through the defaults. In my case, just going through US and skipping everything. And yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward here. When we're presented with the sign in with Microsoft, just do domain join instead, provide a name, next password, I'm going to go ahead and opt out of all of these privacy settings and click Accept. Not now. Okay, so now Windows 10 Enterprise is up and running here. If we do a little full screen, what you're going to find is that our window is cut off. If you're OCD, kind of like me, you want a full screen, and in this case, it's pretty straightforward. You're going to go up to Devices, and just Insert Guest Edition CD Image. What this will do is insert a drive into our folder. So go to File Explorer here. Then just proceed to go to this PC, and then you're going to have this CD drive. Double click it, and then choose the Windows editions, the first one. Yes, next, next, install. This will ask you to reboot, so just click Finish, and I'm going to let this reboot and get right back into it. Alrighty, so now if we go up to our minimize, maximize, and then we just maybe not do that. Wait for it. Boom, there we go. We got it. All right, so you just have to do minimize, maximize, and you got it. So our next step is to download your favorite web browser. In this case, I'm just going to download Google Chrome, and yeah, I don't enjoy doing Edge. So again, just start without your data, running through all of the defaults. Okay, at this point, just download Chrome. Again, running through all the defaults, just clicking and waiting and clicking and waiting. So let's download Chrome, and with Chrome installed, it is now time to start configuring some settings. So in order to install FlareVM, we need to disable some default settings on Windows. So following along here, let's proceed to go ahead and do this. I am going to get off my webcam so that we can do this. First thing is to go to your Windows search bar and look up proxy settings, change proxy settings. Turn automatically detect settings off. Next, we're going to disable Windows Defender. Now, in this case, Windows Defender is going to prevent us from detonating a lot of common malware variants. So what we're going to want to do is disable it and make sure that when we are detonating malware, it's not going to interrupt the execution flow. All right, so going back to the search bar here, we're just going to do Defender. And then you can choose Windows Security. Go to the Virus and Threat Protection. And then under the Virus and Threat Protection, just click Manage Settings. All right, so let's proceed to turn all of these protections off. So just go ahead and click Off, and then click Back. So now the real-time protection is off. You can just click out of Windows Security for the time being. All right, so next we're going to set up a few things in the Windows GPO settings. So going back down to search bar, look up group, and then just choose edit group policy. All right, so let's go ahead and proceed to go into administrative templates, Windows components, and then go to Microsoft Defender Antivirus. Here you can see the turn off Microsoft Defender Antivirus. Double click it, and then choose Enabled, Apply, OK. Next, let's turn off the Windows Firewall. So once again, going to Administrative Templates, this time Network, Network Connections, Windows Defender Firewall, Domain Profile, and where it says Protect All Network Connections, click Disabled. Apply it OK. And then you're going to go back into Windows Defender Firewall. In this case, just go to the standard profile, double click it, disabled, apply, and OK. All right, so at this point, we have the necessary settings defined and set for FlareVM to install. So in this case, I'm going to exit out of basically everything, and this will be our first opportunity to create a snapshot. So in this case, let's just say FlareVM fails to install. We can revert back to this snapshot whenever we need to, which allows us just to have basically a point of reference. So if you go up to Machine, then just click Take Snapshot. I'm going to call this Windows 10 Base. Then click OK and wait for this to take the snapshot. So at this point, we are ready to install FlareVM. And we're going to be doing this via PowerShell. So this is bothering me here. I'm going to close out this search bar. Okay, so opening the search bar here, we're going to type in PowerShell, right-click, run as administrator, and then click Yes. Okay, so right now we are in the C Windows System 32. We need to get to our desktop. In this case, it's just a simple change directory, C/users, proceed to put in your username that you set up, and then just do desktop. Do a clear, and we are good to go. So the commands will be in the description below or in the notes. And basically what we're doing is installing an installation script, unblocking that file, and then running it. So go ahead and put in the first. Okay, so if you're following along here and you want to supply commands into your virtual machine, you need to enable bidirectional capabilities in your clipboard. So going over to Machine, then just do Settings. Here under General, Advanced, you can see a shared clipboard setting. In this case, let's do bidirectional, and then just proceed to click OK. Now you can go into the description below and copy the first command. Okay, so here I have my command open. What I'm going to do is just do a Control-C, minimize, and then just right-click. Now, if you want to go back all the way to the front, make sure there's no space, and then just press Enter. As you can see, an installation script will be installed on our desktop. Next is to unblock the file. So all we need to do is just do Unblock-File install 1.ps1. Then just run the Set-ExecutionPolicy Unrestricted. Once again, right-click copy, paste, and I did that wrong. Okay, go back. Okay, paste. And in this dialog box, make sure just to do Y. All right, at this point, we are ready to run the installation PS1 script. Dot backslash install PS1. Now this is going to go through and make sure some of your settings that we took earlier are finished. And then at this point, it's going to say, have you taken a VM snapshot? You're just going to say, yep, we have. Enter in your credentials that you set up for the Windows box, and then let this proceed to download. Now, there is going to be a little dialog box that will come up here in a moment. All right, so this dialog box took about 2 minutes to pop up here. And as you can see, we're having some installation packages install. So we can go into here and look at all of these different installation packages. Basically, they provide the defaults, and this is all the tools that we need to install for our malware analysis. So, for example, if you're familiar with Wireshark, here's Wireshark, and it's going to install Wireshark as well as all of these other suite of tools. So, like I said, we're just going to keep the default, so just click OK. And then in this case, we are going to let FlareVM install via this script. And this can take anywhere from 10 to 50 to an hour, depending on how long and what your internet connection is. So right now, we're just going to let this install, and we're going to minimize out of this entire virtual machine. Going back over to the web browser, we have Remnux installed. It has completed. This is going to be a little bit of a different setup. We don't actually have to go and download an ISO and everything else. So in this case, let's go into my downloads folder here. I can have Remnux installed. Going back into VirtualBox, so you're going to go up to File, Import Appliance. In this case, you're just going to choose a little folder icon, go into Downloads, and then choose your Remnux installation. Click Next. And then you can use the defaults. There really isn't anything here, so just click Finish. And as you can see up here, it's importing the appliance utility. This will take a few minutes. So now you can pause the video and wait while Windows sets up and importing this appliance. But we're going to go ahead and set up Remnux here while FlareVM is installing all of its tools. Okay, so we have Remnux 1 here. And in this case, it's really easy. All you need to do is just click start. Okay, so since Linux is awesome, you don't even have to install the guest edition's ISO version. You can literally just do a little maximize and boom, you are up with the console here. Clicking minimize, this is Remnux base installation. Very easy to install. Okay, so our next step is to actually go back into VirtualBox and create our own network. So going to VirtualBox once again, go up to the tools panel here, and you're going to see this little network card. Click create. Proceed to select yes. Okay, so down here, we're going to go ahead and put in the 10.0.0.1 address block, and then just do apply. Proceed to click yes. Moving over to the DHCP server tab, let's enable this server. And then we're going to supply the DHCP server 10.0.0.2. Keep the network mask the same, and then with the lower and upper bound addresses, you can choose whatever, but I would just stick to the defaults, which is going to be 10.0.0.3 to 10.0.0.254. Again, just go over, click apply. Okay, so in this case, as you can see, I have 3 network adapters. You probably will only have 2. So this is just something to highlight here. I'm going to be using VirtualBox Ethernet adapter 3, but like if you haven't done any of this before, it's going to be number 2. So it's both the same in this case. It doesn't really matter. So what this virtual network is going to allow us to do is allow Remnux and FlareVM to communicate to each other, but no other access, including the internet, will be allowed in. So we're good here. We've set up this virtual network. What we're going to do now is go back into Remnux, and while FlareVM is continuing to install, there is a few things that we can set up in the Remnux configuration file. Okay, so with Remnux running up here, I am on the desktop. I think I can go over to the activities bar and then just click terminal. Okay, so we are going to be using this network utility called INetSIM. And what INetSIM basically is it allows you to impersonate a whole bunch of services. So for example, you have DNS, FTP, or SMTP. And there's many other services that INetSIM can basically impersonate. So in order for us to actually go out and use INetSIM, we need to change a few things in the configuration file. So we're going to navigate to the etc INetSIM directory. Here I'm going to do a sudo nano inetsim.conf. Now this is the default in INetSIM, and we're going to change a few things. So using our little arrow keys, we can go down, and the first thing that we want to do is uncomment the start service DNS. So like I said here, it can impersonate DNS, HTTP, SMTP, FTP, and a whole bunch of other different services. So scrolling all the way down again, just keep going down. Okay, so here we have this service_bind address. We're going to delete this comment and go all the way over and choose. Now we're going to enter the following 0.0.0.0. Okay, and then just keep going down. Once you get to the DNS default IP section, you're going to once again delete the comment under hashtag. And DNS default IP, we're going to change this to our Remnux box. So it's going to be 10.0.0.4. Okay, at this point, we are good with our settings. So proceed to do a Control X, and then just do a Y, enter. that will exit out of the configuration view. All right, so moving back over to our Windows 10 box, my FlareVM installation script is still installing all of the packages and tools. And at this point, we are almost finished. We just have to do a few things on the FlareVM side. So I'm going to proceed to just let this fully install until I have all the tools. And you will see when FlareVM is installed, because of the wallpaper behind us, it will change. All right, so at this point, I'm just going to let this installation script install the rest of FlareVM, and after that, we can do a few settings changes. All right, so this installation complete dialog box has opened up here, and if you have headphones on, it will actually do a little celebration song thing, but we're good to go. So let's go ahead and just click OK. You can minimize out of this log and then just type enter to exit. Now, there is a very important step here, and that is to go to your failed package.txt. Here you're going to see maybe a few things, maybe not. In my case, I've tried to fix this problem, but I continue to reproduce it. Number one is Google Chrome, and that's totally fine. This Python libraries is also fine, but we definitely need the sysinternals library, which is a set of tools that Microsoft provides. So we're going to have to go out and install this. So let's go ahead and go to Google Chrome and download sysinternals. Now, if you don't see sysinternals in your log file, you're good to go. You can skip to the next timestamp. Here, all you're going to do, look up sysinternals, go to the sysinternals download page, and use the sysinternals suite. Here, you're going to see a whole bunch of executables. So what you're going to want to do is minimize out of Google Chrome. You can minimize out of here. Now, like I said, FlareVM comes with a set of preset tools in the tools folder within the desktop. So what we're going to do is just open that folder there, go to our downloads folder where we had that zip file. Now I'm going to go and just drag and drop this, right click it, and then you can choose extract all, or you can extract the files here. But what I'm actually going to do first is go up to my new folder icon, do sysinternals, drag and drop this into sysinternals, go into it, and then here we can actually extract. So as you can see, we have all of the executables. We will not be using most of these programs, but there are a few important ones, including Procmon. All right, exiting out of this Explorer window here and here, I think we are pretty much set and good to go. The only other thing that we need to do is ensure that we have connection between our Remnux box and our FlareVM box. So we're going to go up to Machine and click Settings, and this is where we're actually going to set up this predefined host-only adapter. So attached to NAT, we're going to use the host-only adapter and provide it with VirtualBox adapter 2 or 3. It doesn't matter. Like I said, mine has 3, but yours will likely have 2. These are both the same on my machine. So I'll just use 3 for the sake of demonstration, keeping it consistent. Just click OK. What you're going to find is on the bottom right, you no longer have internet connection, which is a good sign. Going back down to our host operating system, going into Remnux, we're going to do the same exact thing. So go to Machine, Settings, Network, host-only adapter. I keep saying that wrong. And then just number 3, click OK. OK. Going back into our FlareVM box, we're going to go to the search bar, type in Ethernet settings. Here you're going to see change adapter options. Click this. You can have an Ethernet. Click the right click, properties. And then here you're going to have this Internet Protocol version 4. Click this, properties. And finally, we can actually add in our Remnux box as our DNS server. So if you recall, we set up the little DNS service in our configuration file with INetSIM. So we're going to say, hey, Remnux is our DNS server in this case, so 10.0.0.4. Click OK. Close. You can exit out of this as well. Going back down to Remnux and FlareVM, I think we have everything good to go to do a little ping test. So right now, I'm just going to minimize this Remnux into here and proceed to go into the search bar, type in PowerShell. First, let's confirm the IP address of our FlareVM box, just doing an IP config 10.0.0.3. So let's ping 10.0.0.4. Great, we are getting a reply on that end. Now going back into Remnux, do a ping 10.0.0.3. And boom, we are also getting a ping reply. So that means we have communication between both virtual machines. And ultimately, we are good to go with creating a snapshot, and this will be our base installation when we want to revert back to a clean environment after we have detonated our malware. So let's just go ahead and do a Control-C to get out of the ping, minimize Remnux, can exit out of PowerShell, go up to machine, take snapshot, call this FlareVM base. All right, congratulations. You have just set up your own self-hosted malware analysis lab. So now on to the cloud lab. Here up on my screen is the GitHub AWS Malware Lab project. And I'm going to be using this as my source of inspiration. Basically, I just copy these instructions. There are different configurations out on this GitHub project that you can choose from. We're going to be doing one particular configuration, which is a FlareVM virtual machine with internet access. So full credit goes to Aiden. Make sure to go and give him a little star here. I should do that myself. And then, yeah, well, let's go ahead and jump into this. So if you're new to AWS, like I said at the beginning of the video, you're going to need to create a new account. And when you create this new account, you're going to add your personal information as well as some sort of banking information or credit card. So once you have created your AWS account, you're going to be presented with a console homepage here. And at this point, we are ready to provision our EC2 instance. So what we're going to be doing is creating a template file called an Amazon Machine Image File, or AMI abbreviated. And basically, this is going to offer our template. And then once this AMI is created, we're going to be using Terraform and sourcing the Terraform code presented in this GitHub project. And we're going to be provisioning and deprovisioning the lab on a need to know or a need to use basis. So let's go ahead, go into our AWS Management Console. We're going to go to the EC2, and you're going to see instances here. So go ahead and click Instances. If you are new to AWS, you will not see any instances here. This is one of my development accounts, so I'm constantly playing around with AWS. But ultimately, what I want to make note of here is up on the top right, you're going to see North Virginia, or you may see a different region depending on where you're logging in from AWS. So just make sure to take note of where you're at. So I'm in US East 1. We will need this information later. Now go ahead and use the launch instances. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new instance. Call this FlareVM 3. And this is where kind of the fun stuff comes. So what we're going to be doing is selecting our Windows machine, which is going to impersonate that Windows 10 virtual machine. And we're just going to be using the Windows Server 2022 base. Now, scrolling to the instance type, we're going to be using a T2 medium. Now, make sure to take note of this. This is not free tier eligible, meaning that you will be paying for when you are using this instance. All right, to continue key pair, I'm going to go ahead and create a new desktop key pair. Do whatever you want. Well, I'm on my desktop, so I'm going to be calling it desktop key. Use the default settings and just do create key pair. Scrolling to network settings, we're just going to be using all of the defaults. Make sure that allow RDP traffic is from everywhere for the time being. And then for storage, finally, let's up this to 60. All right, so at this point, we can go ahead and proceed to select Launch Instance. This is going to create our EC2 instance. Now, we need to wait maybe 2 minutes for this to fully provision. We need to have it in a running state. Okay, so once we are in the running state here, we're going to go up to the checkbox, select it. All right, then we're going to go into Connect. And here you're going to be presented with some different profiles. Now, what we want to do is select RDP client. We're going to download the remote desktop file. This is basically just a little template file which allows us to open up a remote session. Now, this is very important. Here where you can see password, get password. This is where we need the password for the Windows 10 virtual machine. So if we click get password, what you're going to find is uploading your private key contents. It's the key that you just generated that downloaded probably to your downloads folder if you are new to this. So just go ahead and upload the file, which is desktop key in my case. Now this is going to be blurred out, but basically all you're going to need to do is just go to and click decrypt password after you've uploaded your private key. And what you're going to find is the password here in plain text. I'm just going to simply select copy, and you can put this wherever you want. For the time being and for the sake of demonstration, I highly wouldn't recommend you do this, but right now I'm just going to put it in Notepad. Save it to my downloads folder and name it RDP password. Okay, so let's click X. All right, so remember you downloaded this remote desktop file. If we go into our Explorer on our host machine, we're going to see FlareVM-3. Go ahead and double click this and then select Connect. And this is where we're going to have that password. So I have it in my clipboard. Just going to right click, paste, click OK. With the certificate, just click yes. We can select yes. We can make it discoverable if we want to. Completely up to you. Okay, so now that we have the Windows server up and running, we are going to download and install FlareVM on this machine and then save this as an AMI. So we're actually going to go to Microsoft Edge here. I'm sure we'll be presented with the defaults. Start without your data. Confirm and start browsing. Okay, so there's going to be a URL, which is a GitHub project, the Mandiant FlareVM GitHub project, and we're going to be downloading a PowerShell script, which is going to basically download FlareVM and all of its associated tools. So I'm just going to paste it in this tab here. This will be in the description below. Okay, all you're going to need to do is just click the download tab, proceed to press keep here, and it's in our downloads folder. We can minimize out of Edge. Next is to open up PowerShell. So going to the search bar, type in PowerShell. I'm going to change directories into the downloads folder, and not that. Clear the contents, and then do an ls. You'll see your installation script in the downloads folder path here. We're going to run a few commandlets, which allows us to run this file. Do unblock-file /install ps1, if I can type right. Next, proceed to do set-executionPolicy Unrestricted. You're going to be presented here with a prompt, and then just do yes, Y. Clear the contents of this screen. All right, so we're almost ready to run this PS1 installation script, but we have to actually disable Windows Defender. So let's minimize out of Windows PowerShell. Go down to your Windows search bar, open up Proxy, Settings. Where it says automatically detect settings, proceed to select this off, and you can just click out of this. Next, go back down to the search bar and then type in group policy. You're going to edit group policy. Okay, so what we're going to do here, maximize this, and under the computer configuration file here, we're going to go under administrative templates, go to Windows Components, and here you'll see a Microsoft Defender antivirus. Select this. Where it says turn off Microsoft Defender antivirus, double click this. And then just select enabled followed by apply and OK. Next, we're going to scroll up, go to administrative templates again. This time go to network. Network connections, Windows Defender Firewall, and then choose Domain Profile. Here you're going to see a Protect All Network Connections. Double click this and choose Disabled, followed by Apply and OK. Now on the left, you'll have the domain and the standard, so go into the standard profile and do the same. Okay. At this point, we can exit out of the group policy editor, go back down to our Windows PowerShell, and we're ready to run the installation script. So let's do this. /install ps1. So this is going to do a whole bunch of checks here. You're just going to proceed to do yes, and then just do yes again. Yes. Here is going to be the password, so make sure to go back down to where you saved the administrative password. All right, so this will proceed to install FlareVM. We need to wait about a minute or two, and there's going to be this dialog box that pops up. All right, so this dialog box pops up here. Basically what this is a way to install extra tools if you want to. In our case, we are okay with defaults. So, if you're familiar with Wireshark or PE Studio, some of these common tools, this is all we need. So we're just going to proceed to select OK, and then run through this entire installation. So this is going to probably take anywhere from 15 to maybe 45 minutes. It depends on how fast your connection is, but you're going to just let this FlareVM installation fully install, and it may restart your machine a couple of times. You'll be presented with a dialog box that says, hey, you're finished, and that is where I will pick up. So moving on to there. So getting back to the dialog box here, you can see that the installation has been completed. We can go ahead and click OK and exit out of the log. Now, if you go to your desktop and open up failed packages, you're going to see a whole bunch of packages, or maybe you won't see any packages. It depends on how your installation worked. And in this case, there are a few installations that we definitely need to make sure that we're installing. So Google Chrome being one of them, and then sysinternals being another. So let's go ahead and go down to Microsoft Edge. I'm just going to simply look up Google Chrome download. Okay, so once Google Chrome is downloaded, let's look up sysinternals download. So sysinternals is a suite of software provided by Microsoft, and there are a lot of different programs that come with sysinternals suite. A few of them we were going to be using in dissection of malware. So what we want to do is go ahead and just download sysinternals suite. Here you can see all of the executables programs that are involved with sysinternals. All right, so returning back to the desktop here, you'll see a tools folder in your desktop. This is what FlareVM installs. It's a whole bunch of preset tools. Go up to the new folder icon, call it sysinternals. Navigate into the folder, and then with the downloads folder here, I'm going to drag and drop sysinternals.zip, and then just do right click, 7-zip, extract here. Okay, so all of the programs now are located in the sysinternals folder, and that is good to go. Now, one thing to note here is that if your logs file, build packages, doesn't have sysinternals, it doesn't have Google Chrome, you are okay. You can actually just proceed to move into the next step. So if sysinternals and Google Chrome have already been installed, that means your FlareVM installation has successfully installed those tools. Okay, so now we can go and proceed to exit out of everything, even Google Chrome. And this is basically our base installation of FlareVM. At this point, we are ready to create the Amazon Machine Image or AMI template. So go up to the little RDP session here and just click Close. And just say OK. So what we can proceed to do is go ahead and select the FlareVM checkbox, go to Instance State, and just stop the instance. Okay, so once the instance has been in the stop state, it says stopped here, select the instance, go to Actions, Image and Templates, and then select Create Image. Name the image whatever you want to. I'm going to call it FlareVM-3 for the sake of consistency. Leave everything default here, and then just click Create Image. Okay, so this will take a few moments to create the AMI, and we can actually see when it's successfully done by going to Images, AMIs. Okay, so while this AMI is being created, we can actually go into the IAM service and create a new IAM profile, which is going to allow us to access this FlareVM box. So in the search bar, just go to IAM and select IAM. If you're new to AWS, you won't see any of these IAM resources. These are just existing profiles that I have out on my development account. What I'm going to do is go over to Users, and then just do Add New User. Here you can make it whatever username you want. I'm going to call it FlareVM, choose Next. Now under here, add user to group, we're going to proceed to add the user to a brand new group. Again, you won't see any of these here. What we're going to have to do is go over to create group, name it EC2 full-access, and then under your permission policies, search for EC2 full access. So Amazon EC2 full access, we're going to attach this policy. So create this user group. I have two of them right now. The one I just created here, I'll just attach it. Okay, then click next. You can tag it with whatever you want, but for now, I'm just going to go ahead and select create user. Okay, so now going up to FlareVM 3, you can go over to security credentials. Scroll down to where you see access keys. We're going to create a new access key. Here we're going to use the use case of command line interface. And then just select the confirmation here and then click next. I'm going to call it FlareVM-3 access key. Okay, we're going to create the access key. And here you're going to get the access key ID followed by the secret. Now this will be the only time you get to see that secret. So once again, what I'm going to do is go to Notepad and copy in both of these here. So access key, copy, paste. Key, show, copy, paste. All right, let's just save this to my downloads folder for the sake of simplicity. Just call this access-key aws.txt. All right, so at this point, we can actually go back to, or we can click done here if we want. We can just go back to the EC2 service. Go to the AMI section. And we may need to wait for this to fully create. So some other steps that we can do while this is creating is proceed to go to your desktop. Okay, so let's go and search the Ubuntu desktop here. I have 2204 installed WSL Linux. I'm going to increase my font here. Click clear. Okay, so there are a few packages that we need to go out and install. It's going to be the AWSCLI, JQ, and Terraform. Before we do that, let's do a sudo apt-get update. All right, our system has been updated. Okay, so now we are ready to install Terraform, JQ, and AWSCLI. Let's go ahead and install JQ first. So just do a sudo apt install JQ, and then just do yes, and wait for this to fully install. Next, we're going to install Terraform. I looked up the instructions here, and I am on Linux WSL, so we actually need to download a few dependencies and the gnupg key before we can install Terraform. So these commands will be in the description below, but I'm just going to go ahead and proceed to copy these for the time being. So just copy and a paste. Right-click to paste, and this will go in and install those dependencies. Now install the gnupg key. Again, just a right click. Whoa. Okay. Alrighty. Next is verifying the fingerprint. Just a simple copy, paste. Okay, copy this. Paste this here. Update the system. Then download Terraform. Again, these commands will be in the description below, but that's pretty straightforward here. We can verify the installation by doing a terraform-help. Terraform is now installed. All right, finally, we're going to install the AWSCLI with a sudo apt install AWSCLI. Press Y, and this will install AWSCLI for us. Once this has finished installing, just do an AWS and see what happens. Maybe it'll give us a help page. That's great. That's all we need to confirm that it has been installed. All right, so at this point, let's print our working directory. Right now, I am in the home grant directory, which is perfect. I'm going to make a new directory and call it cloud. Okay, change directories into this, print working directory. Okay, so now we're in malware cloud lab. All right, so what we're going to do here is proceed to configure our AWS IAM profile that we just generated and add the access key and the secret into our profile so that it can authenticate and we can use resources, specifically EC2. So just go to AWS configure. And then here we're going to see the access key ID, and this is where we're actually going to go to our notepad. We're going to copy the access key. Here, just right click, enter the secret, copy, enter. For the default region name, choose the region that you created the EC2 instance in for the FlareVM. So for me, it is US East -1. And we can use JSON as our default output if we want to. All right, so at this point, we can go ahead and clone the GitHub repository AWS malware lab. So this will be in the description below, but basically it is a simple git clone here, copying the URL, and that will clone the project. Go into the project, AWS malware lab, clear. All right, so we are almost finished here. We need to create a configuration file and add in the AMI ID, region, and AWS account ID, enable INetSIM, and we're good to go. So let's go ahead and do an ls real quick. I'm going to create a new file, and we're going to call it shared auto tf-vars.json. Now here is going to be this configuration block. I'm just going to simply copy this. This will be in the description below. Okay, so we need to change a few things. First, we need to change the default region to the region that we created our FlareVM instance. So US East 1. Going back to our web browser here, under AMI's images here, we can see FlareVM 3 and select this. Here we can go ahead and proceed to copy this AMI ID, add this in the double quotes here. And then for the account, go back to AWS. On the top right here, you can see your account ID. You just copy that and then paste that into your account. All right, so finally, let's enable INetSIM. So just proceed to do true. Control X, Y, OK. Okay, so there is a few things that we need to change in the default Terraform configuration files. First, let's see what version of Terraform we are running. 1.5.4. So go into the main.tf. I'm going to be using the nano text editor and change the required version to that output. So in my case, it's 1.5.4. Yours may be different. Change it to whatever it is. Do Control X, Y, Enter to save the file. We need to change the instance's TF AMI ID, but before we do that, we actually need to go into the AWS console, go to AMI catalog, and then search for Ubuntu. Here we can see Ubuntu 2004. What I'm going to do is copy this little AMI ID up until the parentheses, copy this. Okay, go back into your terminal, go to nanoinstances.tf, scroll all the way down until you see Linux instance with INetSIM. Here we can change the AMI ID to that Ubuntu 2004 default AMI. So just right click and that will paste that AMI ID. Again, Control X, Y, enter. And then finally, we're going to go ahead and change the availability zone in the .network.tf file. So go to nanonetwork.tf, scroll all the way down until you see public subnet. And where it says, whatever it says, I think it's EU West, change this to US East 1A. Wherever you created your FlareVM instance is what you want the availability zone to be. Do Control X, Y, enter, clear, and then let's do a Terraform init, followed by a Terraform plan, and then finally a Terraform apply. Select yes or type in yes. Okay, so this is going to proceed to create all of the AWS infrastructure. Here you're going to see an output of the FlareVM IP address. So let's copy this. I'm going to search for RDP Remote Desktop Client. I'm going to paste this public IP address and then just choose Connect. All right, so this may take a few moments to provision. You may get a little error sign, but all we need to do now is just type in administrator as our username. And then remember that RDP password that we created when we were first creating our FlareVM instance. Well, we're actually going to use this in our case, so just copy and paste that password. Select yes. This will proceed to set up our instance of FlareVM. So we are good to go. We have our instance running. There is a few more things we need to do here. One is to configure INetSIM so that we have that DNS, FTP, HTTP, web server, C2 impersonator, basically. So to do that, what we can do is go down to our Windows search bar, look up Windows PowerShell. Okay, so there is going to be a command here where we can run INetSIM. So this will be in the description, but I have it here in my notes. Press enter. All right, so basically what this is doing is just setting our default DNS server to be this public, or rather private IP address, which is where INetSIM is running with that 20.04 Ubuntu server. To ensure that INetSIM is working, go to Google Chrome or whichever browser you installed. And then when you put in google.com, you're going to see this default HTML page, meaning that INetSIM is running. And then you can even go out and download a random binary. So do mals.exe, and that is going to install a little executable, which INetSIM does when you go and put in .exe. So we'll expand more on that in the next video. But for the time being, this means INetSIM is up and running. All right, so we can exit out of here. And at this point, we are good to go. This is our malware analysis environment for cloud-hosted VM. And so if we're done with our malware detonation, our malware analysis, or we just want to revert back to a clean state to maybe provision or detonate the malware again, I'm going to close out of my remote session. All right, going back to the terminal here, all you need to do is do a Terraform destroy. If I can spell right. Right, so that will destroy all of our infrastructure. Now, before I do this, I just want to quickly show on the AWS console side. If we go over to the Instances tab, what you're going to find is some running instances of INetSIM and FlareVM. I've done this a few times before I recorded this video so that I'm just testing, but basically you're going to see these running instances. And Terraform basically goes out and configures this infrastructure for you, and it's all done through code. So here it's running, but what we're going to see here in a moment is that it's going to be terminated. So if we go ahead and just select yes, this will proceed to delete all of the AWS infrastructure. So going back into our console here, if we refresh, you can see that it's shutting down, and that means, okay, we no longer are having to pay for those instances. And then when you're wanting to reprovision the lab again, all you need to do is you're just going to need to go into this directory here and then do a Terraform init, Terraform apply like we just did, and that will provision a new IP address RDP into that, and you're good to go. You have a clean, fresh instance of FlareVM. Now, something to keep in mind here is you will be charged when this infrastructure is running. So make sure that when you are finished, destroy it because, well, you don't want to be paying for something you're not using. All right, so that is it for the cloud-hosted lab. Hopefully you've learned something new. All right, so hopefully you've learned something new in today's video. Next video, we're going to be dissecting a very well-known malware variant, a banking Trojan, the Zeus banking Trojan. So hopefully in today's video, you've learned something. And yeah, until the next video, well, you know it. Have a good day.